Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Other World podcast. Today, we're doing another issue of our Truth series. And we're so pleased, Fiona and I, to welcome Yia Alias to our conversation. Just to go through, just to introduce Yia to you, to those who don't know her, although I'm sure she's very well known out there, particularly in the New South Wales community, if not further in Australia. Yia is an artist, a transpersonal counsellor, a ceremonialist, and specialises in healing through ritual. And she is the holder of space at the Hearth Ground, which is the most beautiful ground. Both of us, Fiona and I, have been out there for Circle, and it really is magic land, as I'm sure we'll hear more about through Yia. Welcome, Yia.
Thank you for having me here. It's a delightful surprise, actually. So thank you.
And hi, Fiona. Welcome.
Hi, and hi, Yia. It's so lovely to share the space with you again.
So aside from traveling out to the beautiful Hearth Ground and meeting Yia that way, I've actually been working through 7-year cycles in my life. I'm fast approaching, in a few years' time, my second Saturn return. And it felt like a beautiful time to look back and take stock of what's happened before as a way of integrating both shadow and light into a place in my life. This feels like a perfect place for me. And Yia holds this beautiful bone woman program circle experience that I've been moving through, and I'm nearly at the end of it, but it has just been such a wealth of just those moments of like, you never know what's going to come out. And then every month when we meet, it's just amazing how many synchronicities and flows and messages and links happen to what's happening now in my life and what was happening in that 7-year cycle in my life. It's really been an amazing journey that I've taken with Yia. So thank you, Yia, for that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a brave soul that dives into the corridors of the past, and it's a real honor to bear witness to the journey. Yeah, it truly is. Thank you.
And I know that you hold the space for many women moving through their different life cycles. So that's something that Yia also offers. But today, we really wanted to invite you along to discuss this topic of truth, because there's so much that's coming up around truth in the world, and this polarization of where truth is taking us. So it's sort of called Fee and I to hold this space and have these conversations so that we can broaden our capacity to hold others' truths as well as our own. So we've asked you today to bring some of your wisdom around truth and your truths, just for us to open up to and discuss. So maybe we start with maybe your first truth that came to mind.
Oh, how interesting. Okay. Well, before I launch into that, I just want to begin by saying that I sit, live and work here and communicate from the lands of the Darug people. And I want to acknowledge the Darug people, the Wiradjuri people over to the west area, and the Darkinjung people up on the mountain sides further up the road, and acknowledge their sacred stewardship and presence of land for many thousands of years. We're aware that we are on the lands of first impact of white colonisation, and I feel very humbled to be accepted by this land as a hearthkeeper. So it's a great responsibility, and one that keeps me fully alert and fully present to whatever truth might be in any given moment. So yeah, it is an interesting question. You're asking me to begin with the first one. I'll have to say that when you asked for 3, I was a little bit like the rabbit in the headlights. I was thinking, what are they? What are they? And well, I will reflect actually on what I did. I did bring them down to 3, and the first one I came up with was respectful presence. And I'm not sure if it's as much a truth as a way of being, but I think without it, we will flounder, and we are floundering without it. We do in our paint up, it's been shared by my Indigenous teacher, Min Maya, is one of the things that's shared in paint up is may this sacred ochre open my mind to the ways and beliefs of others so I may honour them. And I believe that the real work is actually happening now, that we've been prepared for this moment. All the talk in the alternative communities and the wider community about, the new way and bringing more light into the world. I have found it very interesting how that space has entered into a space of great division. Mm-hmm. And for me, I feel it's really important now that we actually walk this talk, and the only way we can do it is by having a challenge set before us. And so respectful presence for everyone, I think, is very important. We're all humans having an experience here on planet Earth. Belief systems are what have divided everybody everywhere through race, status, gender. I am really cautious that we don't find another space of division by bludgeoning each other with our truths and not holding presence for one another as humans. So I believe here it is. Here's the work. Here it is. Let's have start with respectful presence for each other, but more so respectful presence to the beautiful Mother Earth that we live upon. I see there being no separation at all. We are made of Mother Earth. Our cells are made of the landscape of this planet. And I feel at this moment in time, as we become consciously aware and more awake, that we become we're the voice piece of Mother Earth. And and as my Indigenous teacher says, our soul and her soul are eternally linked, and our souls at the moment are hungry for a more deep and real and honest and joyful connection with life. But how can we do that when we're busy polluting the planet? So I hadn't expected to unpack the first truth in that way. It just opened in that way. So I think let's start with respectful presence and hold to that as a beginning.
I love that starting place, and it's interesting because we're in such a time, I'm sure you're noticing this too, of division. And it's been a question that's been sitting with me for a few weeks now, is how can we bring back a sense of connection when we're all being divided so much at the moment, and why is this happening? And it's just been this really strong sense of it's had to almost explode in this way so that we can actually almost be forced back into our own truth of finding our own place of truth within that, these two very opposing sides. But I love the concept of respectful presence. That just really landed beautifully with me in my own heart as a way forward. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a beautiful term, respectful presence. It's just
Yeah,
has this kind of
something.
calmingness about it in a
Mm.
place that feels like it can be so combative.
Well, it doesn't come easy because, we have to meet our own inner demons and our own judgments, which are embodied within our cellular system because we've grown up in a capitalist money making machine that's been run on greed. And there's, our default settings are made up of that kind of languaging of division and competitiveness and separation and vying for space. So it's a task. And I suppose I might lead myself into the second truth, I suppose. And the second truth I feel for me is to listen deeply. And I heard before we got on today, Fiona, you were speaking of that, that pause, for that, to be able to go into that deeper place in oneself. And unless we do pause, we haven't been able to pause as a collective society. And I don't want to minimize the illness, the pain, the deaths, the challenges to financial stress that people are undergoing. But we all needed to stop and do some deep listening. And when we do deep listening within ourselves, that's where we can actually meet our own inner uh, indoctrinations, I suppose. Anything that keeps us separate from others. And I like to go by, the Buddhist principles of do no harm as a foundational basis, and the deep listening filtered through that lens enables us to be responsible for what actually comes out of our mouth, which creates a whole karmic story that lands into the soul of the earth that needs then so many years to fix and tidy and unpack. So deep listening within, and I believe as we deep listen within ourselves and become responsible, Min Maya, she teaches us we come onto the earth plane for all truth and all knowledge. And we come here to be intimate with the emotions. And once we're intimate with them, they don't have a hold on us. Now, I really value those teachings. She's a senior Wiradjuri lawwoman of women's law. And so when we come into that space of deep listening within ourselves and being responsible for our emotions, then what happens is the beautiful flow and the intelligence of this planet can communicate so much more to us. And there are beautiful Indigenous teachers, great respect to our Indigenous community for sharing their knowledge systems. There's the quality of Dadiri that's spoken of by Dr. Miriam Rose Bauman Unger Morum. Pardon me for my, incorrect pronunciation of this elder's name, but she speaks of Dadiri, the deep listening, and the earth will tell us, but we're all jammed up with obligation, tasks, jobs, the inner critic for one, that keeps us, plundering. All the mess and junk in our mind. So I do welcome this little pause, to be honest. I do welcome the ability to listen deeply. Yeah, so I just thought I'd share the second one with you there because it was in the flow. Yeah.
I would love to ask, just for our listeners here, how you practice yourself respectful presence and deep listening, and maybe you could share some of the ways in which you do that.
Well, I must say that this teaching system has guided me a lot. Being intimate with the emotions and becoming personally responsible and boss of self. So one of the first practices, I suppose, in daily living is when I feel triggered or challenged in a particular situation and an emotion arises, I actually I take responsibility for it. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt or doesn't throw me, but I go, where do I have this within myself? What do I need to, the only thing I can change here is my relationship to that emotion that gets awakened within me. But to be honest, I have been practicing like that for a very long time, but now coming into my 65th year, there's another voice that's kicking in, and she's going, yeah, when enough is enough, enough is enough. And you don't have to take responsibility for, I'll just say it, for other people's bullshit, basically. Yeah. So that's a new one. And she's a bit scary. She's entering in at the moment, and she's, I suppose she comes with age. It doesn't get easier, I have to say, the feeling of truth. You know, we do see all the old crones, don't we, with all their truth coming out. And yeah, and it is challenging. Society is very challenged by the truth speaking of elder women, and this is why we've all become invisible. The other thing is, and this is, thank you for asking that question. At this moment in time, I realized that I had spread myself so thin in so many different organizations and people and needs, and feeling, oh yes, I'm a community weaver, I need to be available. Well, I burnt out, totally burnt out. So at the moment, I've I strayed very far from a vital part of myself. And I listened to Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who is the curandera of the modern medicine women, I would say, yeah. And I listened to her Mother Night series. And she always brings me back home, and she spoke of the medial women. And then I realized, oh, of course, that's who I am. I am a medial woman. How did I stray so far? One that needs to listen, one that needs to be present, to be alert to, I suppose, to where society could be going if we continue on a particular trajectory. Now, having said that, the stripping back has brought me back into less distraction of others' needs and more to tending my own half. And when I do that, when I do care for the land, care for the tasks, the everyday tasks around me, the voice, I just call it the voice, the intelligence. I don't know what else to call it. We don't quite have a paradigm really for it. Some people call it spirit, some might call it God presence, but I just see it as this grand intelligence, and that communicates through me. And it will, and it's, even though it's a very strong voice, it's a very vital voice, and I serve out of that voice where I can. I cannot say I'm perfect at it. I feel like a, what do you call it? Like a, is it adept? I don't know. There's a word for someone that's like a disciple in a way, you know, trying my best. Yeah. And that comes right down to, you know, what needs care here. When is it time to, you know, clear the fire for the fires, and just listening and acting immediately from that listening place. Yeah. That's the best way I can frame it, to be honest. I think having a teaching path that comes from the Indigenous teachings from this land has been a really great guide for me, and one I truly cherish and grateful for. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much yeah, there was so many places and so much to unpick in that. And just first of all, just what lights me up to hear you speak of that time, the you know, the elder, the woman, the crone who shares her wisdom, and how this place has been hidden for so long because it's such a scary thing for the society we live in to listen to, and how important and beautiful. And I feel so grateful that you're here, that women like you show up and speak, because it's just, it just lights me up to have that wisdom shown in the world for so long. I think women have sort of like looked ahead, and there's not been that those lights that we follow, and it's just so beautiful to have these way showers ahead that I can look to. I really appreciate it. So I just want to show you my gratitude for you showing up in that way.
Oh, thank you. I thank you for your words in that way. And look, to be honest, for me, I remember being a floundering, emerging elder back in my late 40s, early 50s. And it was other women ahead of me that reached out their hand to me and saw my strength and brought me forward. And I'm so grateful to them. I'm so grateful for the elders of the Australian women's, community, from the goddess community, from so many teachers really, and guides, and just open-hearted women, and to bring us through. Because ultimately, at the moment, I believe that the eldering woman's voice needs to come out, because enough is enough. Enough is enough, and people are terrified of that voice. And I still don't quite know how to approach all of that with that voice. I know if we hit people hard over the head with certain truths, it's never going to work. But being women, and we're fluid like water, we're going to have to find a way where the truth, whatever that truth is, can actually touch people in a way that's meaningful, rather than that guilt producing. So I know that recently we've had a conversation with Denny about joy. I believe that there's to walk the path, the third path is the way to go, where we're not sitting in a space of division of good or bad, or me or you, or yes or no, vaccinated, unvaccinated, any of that stuff. That's all of it, your color, gender, that we just start living a life of beauty and authenticity and respectful presence, and live that life and share out of that life to give others the inspiration to live their lives in that way too. And that could mean really sharing how we're managing our consumer choices, our living choices that impact the earth. And the more we come into this eldership, the more we're going to find it harder and harder to live a life that is really harmful to Mother Earth. And I think it's time to walk our talk, actually. Yeah. And I suppose that took me straight into the third truth, which is creating creating a reciprocal relationship with the earth, so that there is a flow. There's a beautiful lemniscate flow. We receive, we give back, we acknowledge, we give. There's, that beautiful, where a generation of awakened consciousness of the planet, we can give back, and I believe Indigenous people spent a very long time in ceremony, and ceremony is a really beautiful way to bring that awareness into everyday living. Yeah. I know I've seemed to have gone on a really big tangent. I haven't spoken in this way for so long that it's all sort of wanting to come out now, but I just want to get this one last thing out. We have a little joke in my house about truth speaking, and especially with my daughter too, because usually when people say to you, well, do you want to hear my truth? And it's like, quick, get the armor on, batten down the hatches, something ugly is about to happen. And people go, if you're prepared to hear my truth, well, actually not really. And I think when that comes out in that way, even though we joke about it, I've actually had clients over the years of my counselling who finally found the truth of their dysfunction story, for example. And now they're about to go off and confront their poor parent in a nursing home with their truth, you know. And I go, oh, no. Seriously? We can't use truth to harm others. You can't go to a nursing home with someone that's close to the end of life that has never done crystal healing or Reiki or, you know, spiritual practices, you know, any of those things, or transpersonal or counseling or any of that. Our truth is our truth, to be responsible with it. And we've incarnated onto planet Earth with this story, with these teachings, with this family, with this presence. I do not believe that truth speaking should be a tool of harm. And I'm happy to end there.
Oh. I love that, though, that you brought your truths, you know, to a close with that piece, because I think that's so important. And truth is a very confronting energy, and we can sometimes feel really blasted by other people's truths, and it can feel like a weapon that we use. And so to sort of have that concept and hold that concept in your heart, it actually helps you to understand that truth is an inner journey. It's not an outer thing that we direct to other people. It's something that is something we experience within ourselves. And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that, to bring it home to our own hearts instead of using it as a weapon, as you said, against other people.
It's interesting because this week we had a podcast for the Energies of the Week. Fee and I do that every week, and we didn't do this week, but I did pick a card for the week, and it was the Truth card, and it was the Sword. And, you know, what comes to mind for me is Kali instantly. And as soon as you were speaking, I think of that place of Kali and of the sword being used as truth. And it came to me that possibly it's truth that needs reframing in that way that you're speaking. And I know we talk about, you know, truth coming from that heart place, but there's still that sword in it. And I wonder if there's a way to reframe truth away from the sword and have a different visual being put with it in a way, because does it always have to have the pain of, you know, split or cut or that kind of visual with it? That is the Kali truth, or the Kali sword.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And, you know, listening to you speak there, Denny, I feel like I fluctuate between many paradigms. You know, I fluctuate between the Buddhist paradigm of, you know, do no harm, and the teachings that I've gone through with that. Then my activist comes up really strongly, and I want, you know, that what is it? That righteous truth to come out, to wake people up. But, you know, yeah, it's a great question. How do we reframe out of the Kali truth? Maybe we can use Kali's sword, you know, how she cuts away all of those heads of those demons, you know, that keep rising up out of the blood. Maybe that's something that we look within ourselves and use that within ourselves. And we're all unique. We all got a very unique genius, yeah? And it'll express itself uniquely through our life experience, through our genetics, through the land that we've come from. And each of us can express the truth of the love in our heart from integrating all the things that we've been busily chopping away, and being really alert with that. I don't know. I find I still struggle with that. Yeah, so it's a really good question. And like I said, I do my dance. I do my dance within that. Yeah, it's really not an easy one.
And maybe the invitation is to allow for it all, and just the wisdom, and use the wisdom to guide when we need to work with our truth in different ways.
Yes, something that's coming through really strongly at the moment, because I'm creating another very large prayer mandala for a group soon. And I'm really feeling that sense of not yeah, not going down that division path, not being distracted by it, but being present with what is in any given moment. And I feel like I lost my thread there for a moment. What was it that you said, Fiona? And I will
and it was
see if I
along the
can read
lines
back
of
in there.
just, yeah, it was along the lines of just allowing the space for it all and knowing
Ah,
when
yes, space
yeah.
for it all. Yeah, thank you. And what came through this process this week is to, yeah, how do we be with it all? I think what the planet needs strongly right now is that some of us can continue to hold the vibration of loving, respectful presence so it doesn't become extinct. Yeah. That's what's come through really strong. The forces of materialism and division and fear and control are absolutely enormous. And I think the idea that we're going to wake up one day and collectively all our little truths of, you know, the right way are going to just suddenly override all of that. That's epic, that big machine. And it can feel very disheartening and depressing. You know, a lot of people are, you know, are feeling that. But I think let's not let the beauty of the soul, the true nature of our soul, which yearns for beauty and love and joy and creativity, to become extinct from the planet. So there's, it doesn't matter how many of us there are. Let's hold to that. Let's hold to that so that others can find their way. Yeah, I find that that's really important. Yeah. Yeah, that's what's come really through very strongly right now.
It kind of takes me to a full circle back to your first truth, because we talked about being in this space, this silent place, and where we're at collectively with all being going into these lockdowns and coming out, and in those quieter moments, the silence and the silent presence. And for a lot of people, I think a lot of people out there, those moments of what should be quiet is when the mind actually speaks louder. And I think that has happened with a lot of the collective, that in not having the distractions, that the mind is distracting even further. And certainly I think it's what we're seeing with the divisions. Give me something so that I can put my attention there. And our attention's gone on so many different places, you know, like means even the spiritual community, and I know we know it, it's all of a sudden they're here and there's a us and them, and I wonder whether that's the place of noise that's happened in the forced silence.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I resonate what you're saying, and what's coming through to me is this, you know, this wanting to return to normal, you know. And when I hear that word, it's like a giant alarm goes off in all of my system and screams in my ears. How we have been living is not normal. You know, the destruction of the planet, extinction of species. Australia's got the most rapidly extinction rates in the world. The toxicity of the oceans through what I call us as the consumerati. Yeah. And I call that, you know, that the system that has people working such long hours to pay off their mortgage, to pay their rent. Everything is just that bit out of reach. So everybody's in that striving and trying. And so now I see that what was happening in that normal was the wage slave Netflix combo. Of course, you know, you're working so hard, and then you come, oh, take that breath, and I just put on Netflix, and then you know, the next thing's dished out to you. So yeah, when there's a collective imposed isolation upon everyone, what have people developed within themselves to be able to deal with that noise that they're left with? You know, it's no surprise they've left Dan Murphy's open as an essential service. It seemed to be quite insane to me. You know, everybody's dumbed down and numbed out. People have, through this wage slave Netflix combo, the old-fashioned Aussie Australian barbecue on a weekend where people would come together in communion, share their stories, be inspired by each other, connect and laugh. All that got taken away with the shops being open 24/7 in the consumerati world. So, of course, what do we replace that with? You know, the mind then can just feed and feed on all of, you know, all the other, you know, negativities that are in there. You know, with the religious structures gone, there's no sort of, you know, real God presence to guide as it possibly was guiding once, even though we don't resonate with it, a lot of us, but it took away everything. So no respectful presence, you know. Going to the Westfields was the outing, you know, with all of that noise and, you know, franchises. So individual creativity was disappearing, you know. Yeah, I can feel my activist really rising now in that space. I can really feel her bubbling up. Yeah, so people don't have a framework to lean into. Yeah, I know Carl Jung way back last century, or whenever, I lose track of all the centuries now, he would steer his clients back to whatever religious framework they had, because he realized that at least if they entered into a space that gave their life meaning, they could have a life of meaning, and that would help and support them. But yeah, what meaning is there for people now? Yeah. Yeah, that's why we need way makers and pathfinders that can start modeling a different way of being. I mean, I have a little secret desire. It's not that secret. I've spoken of it so many times that I would like to do a video series of eldering women all around Australia, because there are some very unique older women out there, older than me, and they are phenomenal in the way they live their lives. We need to see how that looks like, you know. Yeah. Anyway, that was my little activist rant. Yeah.
So much truth there. So much truth there. I know for me, what happened in lockdown, and there's certainly some people that I know, Fiona and a few other women, that are reveling in the silence of the world, because we sit so comfortably in silence within. And I keep offering to women around me who don't sit there so comfortably, you know, go to land. Go for a walk, go by the ocean. There is nothing that helps me more than that support of earth, which is why I love so much going out onto land, even deeper, you know, into the Uluru, you know, into those places, because there is a silence there that just holds you, where the silence in the city can be confusing.
Yes, I think as much as possible we need to encourage our communities to go out in nature wherever they can, even if it's a park. Go for a walk. Walking is such good medicine. Be with the space of the trees. At the moment, you know, after this blessed season of rains, you know, the spring that's emerging is so beautiful and gifting us with her smells and you know, with her bounty. There is a lot of beauty to experience, and I know that we could possibly be having another bushfire season coming, and you know, there's fear around that as well. But then I realize if we don't stay in with the beauty that's in the present moment for fear of it going, then we'll miss something. We'll completely miss something, you know. Yeah, a return to joy. And I know too, many are suffering in this space of isolation because they don't have others to, you know, be in joyful presence with. Yeah. That's very sad. That's very lonely for many. Yeah, it's hard because I know that not everything that I will say will resonate, and that's why I've been very cautious. I've been very quiet for the first year ever on Facebook, because any truth that I would have in a given moment that I would want to share on, I would then dilute it through this, you know, internal Baba Yaga that would say to me, well, that might not align, that might actually trigger people, that might do this, really, are those words necessary right now? Which was very challenging, because the truths that were coming out were feeling very alive and awake in that moment, but filtering it through the great her and the do no harm, I felt quite speechless, for someone that normally likes to communicate. So I've gone through my own dark night of the soul, and what's come through is let's hold respectful presence for each other through all of it, through all of it. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful words, Yia, and thank you so much for sharing all that you are and all that you've brought to this conversation. And I'm sure that there's a lot in there for people to feel into for themselves and find their place of truth around as well. And I hope that the conversation we've had with you today inspires people to look at the things that you've brought through for us all to sit with. So thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you both. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I've always balked at the public speaking aspect, but yet I've been born as a triple air communicator. And I usually want to run the other way. So I really, I feel very grateful for the opportunity to share. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Thanks, Yia.
Thank you.